Hey everyone, welcome back. So obviously, same shirt, so same day as the last video. Alright, so here's what's up. When I was doing the spark plug, or the spark plugs I should say, because I did the other one off video like I said I was going to, something caught my eye, and I got curious. So I decided to go ahead and lift off the gas tank because it's just hanging on there loose for right now because I got to take it to the body shop because there's a dent in it and I want it to look good. You know, get that dent out, repaint it, blah, blah, blah. So when I lifted off the tank, I noticed this. Okay, so here's the harness. I clipped off the ties that were holding it on because I want to look through the manual and make sure that I'm tying it back correctly like it's factory spec. So here's what I noticed. So here's the top of the engine. Here's the cylinder head cap. Now, you see those two holes right there and that one down there? Well, there is a mount that's supposed to connect those two holes to that one for a top end motor mount. And it is missing. So now I have to fabricate one. So yeah. So here's the thing, people. You would think that something like that is like, oh my god, it's going to cost so much money and blah, 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 blah. Well, no, actually fabricating something like that is actually fairly easy. And let me explain. So what I mean by fabricating it is going to be easy. Well, you really only need about 3 pieces of equipment in order to make that particular bracket, at least at the outset. All right, so what those 3 pieces of equipment are is a pencil, a piece of board or cardboard, paper, whatever, something that you can write on, and a pair of scissors. Now, I knew I was going to have to do that, and so I went and bought a pair of scissors because I can't seem to ever find any in my house. So these are going in my toolbox. But when I bought them, they came in this little, thing, and I went, well, I got to make a template. I need some cardboard, so why not just use this? I'm going to throw it away anyways. I might as well get some use out of it. So why not? All right, so all you got to do is hold it up to those 3 areas that I showed you, mark around them, and then draw in where you want your plate to go, and then cut it out. Boom, done. Now the reason why you want to do it like this is because you can spend hours and hours cutting steel, going and make sure it's correct. Oh, it's too short, cut another piece of steel. Oh, it's too long, cut it down. Oh, I went too far, and so on and so on and so forth. Whereas with this, if you screw up, it's not that big a deal. You can just go get another piece of cardboard, do it again. Super cheap, doesn't really cost anything. Whereas with metal, you can hack metal off of it, but once you hack it off, you can't put it back because you need it to be a solid piece. You can't hack a piece off and go, oh, well, let me add it back, weld it, because then you have a section where if it breaks, that's going to be the weakest link. So why bother risking that? Just keep using paper and cardboard. It's the easiest thing to do. It's not that big a deal. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because A, it's a good piece of advice, and pretty much any mechanic or any fabricator who's worth their salt, they use this method. They will never just flat out hold a piece of metal up, cut it out, and be like, oh, well, I screwed up. Here, let me throw this perfectly good piece of metal away and use another piece of metal. It's a waste of money. It's a waste of material. They don't like doing it. Neither do I. Now, what I'm planning on making this out of is this. Now, yes, I know it's rusty. You ain't got to tell me. Now, I got this originally. I don't even remember where I got it. It's just a piece of diamond plate. Now, but bear in mind, this thing is beef. This thing is like 3 millimeters thick. That is perfectly good for a motor mount. Oh, hey, Mr. Dead Spider. This is perfectly good for a motor mount, and just this small plate, this thing's heavy. So using this for that, it will work. Now, I will cut this out at some point, but for right now, I'm just gonna make the template. So I will try and position the camera so that way you can see what I'm doing and you can learn how I'm doing it. Now, because of how dirty that area is, very possibly I could cut a small piece out of this, push it up against it really hard, and use my thumb to like rub it in, like into the corners, and it may make an indentation impression of all the holes and the circle and like in the outer diameters of all the holes. And if that works, then I can just use a pencil and just trace around it, and boom, I've got my mount, and it didn't take me any more than just a couple of minutes. So yeah, so we'll see what happens. Okay, so again, those are the two mounts, and there's the bottom one. So what you want to do is put it into the area that you're needing it to be at, and then you either go from the back side and give the shape with a pencil, draw it out. But what I'm going to try and do, I'm going to try and press it into place hard enough to where maybe the shapes of the inner diameters and the outer diameters of all three holes or all three mounts will show up. If I can do that, then I can just do that and use the pencil to line them out. Now, once you make the shape for one side, it's the exact same shape for the opposite side. So if you're making one, all you got to do is make it, flip it over onto that piece of steel, draw it out on the mirrored side, and boom, you have exactly what you need. You have both plates, and then you just have to buy bolts to float through all three holes. And that's it. So let me try and see if I can template this out, and I will come back and show you what I did. Okay, everyone, so I'm back, and I tried the indenting it, and here's what I came up with. So as you can see, I did manage to get the inner diameter and the outer diameters of all three holes. The bottom one got a little funky, but it's manageable. I can deal with it. So now I can just take a pencil, trace it out how I want it, and hopefully it'll work. So let me try and do that and see what I can come up with. Okay, everyone, so I'm back doing from cutting the template and whatnot. So here's what I originally came up with, and it fits, but the top area is not as tall as I want it to be, because I'd rather it be almost flush to the top rail of the frame, so that way it's got enough meat, because this is not enough. And the backside got a little short on the trim right here, so took this, put it on another piece of the same board, traced it out, and got it to this. So now it's got plenty of meat up here, so it won't budge nearly as much, and the same thing over here. It's still got a good amount of meat down at the lower mount. So now I just have to punch the holes. So here's something that I, for whatever reason, didn't think of, or I completely forgot. So originally I just tried to fold the holes over and cut them out with a pair of scissors. Stupid. So, an owl. So all you gotta do, put it up to where you want it mounted in the correct position, and then take this, float a hole through it, and then luckily I have leftover tools that I've found or people have just given me. So this punch is the exact size for the holes on the top, on the two top mounts, like up to here, and this drill bit is the exact size for the lower mount. So I can float this after I make the initial hole. Done. It's that simple. It's that easy. Okay, everyone, so I've managed to get the camera literally sitting on the wiring harness that's hanging. So hopefully I can do this and y'all can see how I'm doing it. So first, before you start punching holes, make sure it's situated in the correct spot of how you want it. And this is not, so I need to flip it around, unfortunately. So now it's pretty much where I want it. And let's see. Get it down about there. Yeah, okay. So now I'm going to hold it at the top and I'm going to float this through on the bottom one first. Alright, so holes in. So that's good. Now, let's see if I can float this drill bit through. And I can't. So I'm just going to rotate this owl so I got the right hole size, basically. So I'm going to have to do it with the top two as well. But maybe I can use this one. No, I'm going to have to use the owl. Right there. I hope y'all can see what I'm doing. I'm really trying. That way y'all can see how to do this kind of stuff. Alright, so that's roughly about it. Now, alright. Okay, sorry everyone for the shakiness and not having a proper visual cue. I will try and get a stand so I can position this exactly how I need it so y'all can see exactly how I'm doing it, so that way it doesn't turn up like it just did. Alright, so anyway, so floating the holes through worked pretty well, I will say that, and this is how they turned out. Now there's still enough meat around all the edges, so I'm okay with that. I might cut back on the back side a little bit right here and extend this side out a little more because I think it just got off center possibly. So, but yeah, so I've got it pretty much exactly how I need it, and I'm fine with that. So we'll go from there. And so when you're using a Sharpie, now look, now as big as this plate is, for whatever reason I thought I was going to start drawing there. No, that's not what you want to do. Material is precious, so put it as close to the edge as you can so you don't waste as much material as possible. See, because there I've got a good section of one entire side completely edged out in this plate. So now I'm going to draw this out, and remember with a Sharpie you don't have to press hard, it's not that important. You want to just make sure that you get the shape correct, not much of anything else. Now remember, when you're drawing out the template, hold the card down to the material, so that way you get a nice clean line when you're going around the whole thing, because otherwise if you're not holding it you can try and line it and it'll move and you'll have to do it all over again. Then you got to deal with lines that you don't want there, so just be aware of that. Now with the holes, just go inside those holes as best as you can to get the general basic shape, so that way when you go to drill it, remember I said that I needed to make one side just slightly wider. So now I've got that widened out, and then with the holes, just circle them out as best as you can to proper circle, once you drill out the holes, you know, if they're a little bit wider than they need to be, that's fine. It gives you a little bit of wiggle room to play with if you need it to, if you need to, you know, maneuver it. Because otherwise, you could sit here and just drill and drill and drill and drill, and you wind up with massive holes, and it's not necessary. So I'm not going to throw this away just yet because I may need it again. But once I cut this one out, I can just flip it over onto the same piece of steel, draw that out, and, you know, then make another one. So yeah. So you see, here's what I'm talking about. All right, so I think you can see that. All right, yeah, at this angle you can see it. All right, so got the outline, got the 3 holes. Now, when you're doing the holes, make sure you got a center punch and a hammer. Center punch the very center of the hole, and take a drill bit. Take a small drill bit first, and then slowly work it up in size until you got it about the size that you need. Now, one thing that you can do, and drill bit set, what you can do is you can get some of your bits out and go up or down in size. Just get the general size that you think the holes are. Float a drill bit through it. Float a drill bit through it. And this one, let's see, on the top mounts, it's got a good amount of wiggle room, so I want to go up a size. So let's see, at a 19/64. That's why I prefer metric. Alright, this one's a little tighter, but it still has a little bit of wiggle room. So let's go up one more size. Hold on. Stupid notebook in there. Alright. Getting there. Slowly but surely getting there. Alright. I think this one is probably about as tight as we're probably going to get with it. Maybe. Let me go up one more size, see where it sits. No, go up one more size. Okay. So the final size for these is an 11/32. Again, fractions, I don't know why. Anyway, so now one thing that you can do on your template is you can write down the size of the drill bits. So let's see, 11/32. So, and since this is on cardboard, I'll write it with a Sharpie. And just make sure that you write final size, so that way you know that's where you need to stop. What I would do is I would probably start with like a 3/16 size drill bit, step it up from there, step it up again, step it up again until I get to 11/32. Then all the holes are the exact size of the holes on the frame, and on the engine mount. But I might go one size bigger just so I got wiggle room. Because it might need to shift a millimeter here or there, you don't know. So, but that's me, that's what I do, so take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So I will cut these out off camera, get them cleaned down, and, you know, get the rust off of them. I may end up using that quick glue since it may get the rust off, and then if I do, I'll, you know, give it a good clean off with some nail polish remover, because that's basically acetone, and it gets any kind of residue off, any kind of anything off. And then I'll probably just spray paint over it with some primer, you know, if nothing else, just to save it for the time being until I put something else over it. And once I do that and I get things mounted in place, I will, you know, come back and give you an update, let you know how it went. But also one other thing, and this is something that's fairly simple, and I just wanted to tell you all this. All right, when it comes to doing stuff like this, if you don't have the bolts that were originally in there that held that together and you have to buy them for something like this, you do not need the OEM bolts from Honda. It is not necessary, it's not even remotely needed. You can just as easily go down to Ace Hardware or Lowe's or Home Depot or wherever you want to go to and go get these three nuts and bolts. All right. Now, the reason why I'm saying that is because Honda makes these bolts, or any bike manufacturer makes bolts specifically for specific holes. Now, if you have the general size, like we already figured, you know, with that, you can go down to Ace Hardware. They have, or Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever hardware store you want to go to. They have a size meter for bolts to let you know, hey, how big they are, how long they are, whatever. You can measure your plate, double up the thickness, measure the size of the mounts, so you can get a total length of the bolts that you need. Okay? It's that simple. That's all you gotta do. You go down there, get the bolts and the nuts, and if it's a metric bike, stick with metric. If it's an SAE bike with metric and standard, or just standards, fractional bolts, then do those. Don't mix and match. It's a pain in the butt, and no one likes to deal with it. All right. Now, once you do that, you come now. If they don't have the exact size you need, you wind up having to get some that are a little bit longer. All you gotta do, run the nut down, tighten everything up, the exact tightness that you need it, and then take a Sharpie and leave yourself a little bit after the nut, so that way you still got some threading to play with. Take a Sharpie, mark where you want to cut the bolt, and take a cutoff wheel, cut the bolt through that line that you made. But make sure you do that with the nut still on it. Just run the nut down a lot farther. And then that way, when you're done, you're gonna have, burrs and whatnot. When you take that nut off, it'll clean those burrs off, or should anyway. And at least that way, you'll know that you can get that nut back on there. Because sometimes if you cut it wrong, or you do it like an off-angle cut, a nut won't thread on there, and then you have to start all over. All right. Now the reason why I'm saying that you can go to any hardware store to get bolts for this, any bolt, regardless of what it is, when it comes to like metric or standard, you can look at the grades. Grade 5 is any automotive grade bolt. You can use it on cars, trucks, motorcycles, boats, whatever. You can use it on anything you want. You have to use stainless steel on bolts because obviously rust. But yeah. Now, grade 8 is like industrial grade. It's heavy duty stuff. And I generally try and get grade 8 if I can, but that's me. So, like I said, if they sell bolts that are good enough to be used on cars, you can use it on this, okay? It's not that big a deal. So, there's just a little bit of knowledge for you when it comes to bolts and nuts. And if you have the ability, get nylock nuts. What nylock nuts are, they are the nuts with the little plastic ring in them. They're self-tightening. Well, not once they are on there, they don't spin off. Generally, I mean, but more times, like almost near 100% of the time, once you get them on there, they're not going to spin off. You just have to make sure that they're tight on whatever you're trying to cinch down. And then you're good. So use nylock nuts, but if you don't use nylock nuts, then make sure you get blue thread locker or blue Loctite, Permatex, whatever. It's called thread locker. That's what it is. Get blue. Blue is medium strength. Okay, use that if you're worried about the nuts coming off or anything coming loose. Okay. Now, the reason why I'm saying use blue is because red is high strength. Red is for stuff, if you don't ever want it to come off, because once red dries, you're not getting that off unless you take a really strong impact wrench or a blowtorch to it. Plain and simple. Okay, so just a bit of forewarning. So you can use blue, you can get it off by hand. It's not that big a deal. You can use a socket wrench or just a normal wrench. If you got blue Loctite on it, you can get it off. If it's red, forget it. It ain't ever coming off. So there you go. All right, so I'm sorry if I rambled. I will see y'all in the next one, and I will let you know how this turned out, and hopefully I'll have the plates cut, painted, and mounted. So, see ya.